Imagine opening your front door, right? And you receive this hot, custom-ordered meal delivered directly to your house.
Right, like a pretty standard Tuesday night for most of
Yeah,
us.
exactly. Or setting up a recurring monthly subscription for a service that just, keeps your professional work tools in perfect condition.
Hmm.
Or contracting an independent gig worker to come out and clear the weeds from your yard. Now, picture all of that happening, but the person making the delivery is wearing a bowler hat.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the year is 1919.
It completely shatters that illusion we have, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because we tend to view things like gig work or hyper niche subscription services, localized marketplaces. We think of all that as this shiny new creation of the smartphone age.
Right, like we invented it, which
Mhm.
is exactly why the source material we're jumping into today is just so captivating.
Yeah.
We're taking a deep dive into a genuine, raw piece of history today. It's a 1919 manual collated by Harold M. Dunphy, and it's titled 1,000 Ways to Make a Living, or an encyclopedia of plans to make money.
Such a classic early 20th century title.
Seriously. And our mission for this deep dive is to basically extract the mechanics behind these century-old survival strategies. We want to arm you, the listener, with this vintage toolkit for financial resilience. Because as we'll see, the underlying human behaviors, they haven't changed one bit.
Not at all. And what makes Dunphy's collection so incredibly valuable for anyone trying to understand market fundamentals is this specific editorial choice the publisher made.
Oh, right. The language thing.
Exactly. They explicitly stated in the preface that they chose to leave the submissions in the raw, quote, language of the people.
Which is so rare for that time.
It is. They flat out refused to polish the text
Yeah.
or, dress it up in high literary phraseology because this was published in the immediate aftermath of World War I.
Right.
So it was directly targeting a really volatile economic landscape. You had returning soldiers, shifting industries, widows just trying to secure their financial footing.
So it's this completely unvarnished look at everyday hustle. But what really caught me off guard is how Dunphy actually structures the book.
Yeah, the roadblock.
Yes. Before he lets you look at a single one of those 1,000 business plans, he sets up this massive philosophical roadblock.
He basically argues that you cannot safely make or keep money until you completely rewire your relationship with wealth itself.
Right. It's like he requires you to adopt a very specific foundational mindset first.
Yeah, and to do that, Dunphy uses Benjamin Franklin's really famous 1757 essay, The Way to Wealth. He uses it as the literal constitution of the book.
He prints it right at the very beginning.
Right at the start. And he mandates that its principles have to be applied to every single plan that follows.
So for those who haven't read it, Franklin frames the essay around this character named Father Abraham. And he's giving a speech to a crowd of people gathered at an auction.
Mm-hmm.
And the crowd is complaining bitterly about how heavy the government taxes are. They are just completely blaming external forces for all their financial struggle.
And Father Abraham's response is just this masterclass in shifting the locus of control.
Oh, absolutely.
He tells the crowd that, well, yes, the government's taxes are heavy, but you're looking in the wrong direction. He says we are taxed twice as much by our idleness, 3 times as much by our pride, and 4 times as much by our folly.
It is a brutal reality check.
It really is.
He is basically telling them, hey, your own bad habits are bankrupting you way faster than the tax collector ever could.
Exactly.
And he uses these incredibly sharp aphorisms to just hammer home the mechanics of like rigorous industry and relentless frugality. Things like a small leak will sink a great ship, and fools make feasts, and wise men eat them.
Yeah, they are very catchy.
But the part that felt the most urgent, at least to me, was his absolute teardown of debt. He writes, silks and satins and scarlets and velvets put out the kitchen fire.
Which is such a brilliant metaphor for the opportunity cost of vanity. Franklin is illustrating that buying non-essentials just to project an image of wealth actively consumes the actual resources you need for survival and, future capital.
But he goes even deeper into the psychology of debt, too.
He does. He argues that owing money inherently strips away your liberty. There's this one deeply profound line in the text. He says, lying rides upon debt's back.
I really want to unpack that specific line because it feels so relevant today, especially with modern consumer credit.
Yeah.
How exactly does debt create a culture of lying, according to Franklin?
Well, when a person takes on debt they can't comfortably service, they inevitably fall behind.
Right.
And to survive the social and legal pressure of those missed obligations, they start making sneaking excuses.
Oh, like dodging phone calls from collections.
Exactly. They avoid their creditors, they invent reasons for delays, and eventually their baseline veracity just deteriorates. The psychological burden of the debt basically forces them to become a liar just to navigate their daily lives. So, by avoiding the silks and satins, you aren't just saving money, you're actually protecting your psychological freedom and your integrity.
Okay, here is where I do have to push back a little on Father Abraham's philosophy, though.
Okay, wait for.
Because if you read Franklin's strictness through a modern lens, it sounds dangerously close to the toxic hustle culture burnout we talk about today.
I can see that.
Right. If you are relentlessly working, constantly saving, and denying yourself every single little luxury, isn't that just hoarding? Doesn't a person, whether they are operating in 1919 or today, deserve a little leisure?
That reaction is incredibly common. And it's actually a trap that Franklin anticipates within the text itself.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Someone in the crowd at the auction actually asks Father Abraham that exact question. They ask, "Must a man afford himself no leisure?"
And what does he say?
Franklin's response kind of redefines the entire concept. He states, "Leisure is time for doing something useful."
Time for doing something useful. That feels like a very demanding definition of free time.
It does, but it makes a lot more sense when you look at the sharp distinction he draws for the reader. Franklin separates a life of leisure from a life of laziness.
Okay.
A life of laziness inevitably leads to poverty and stress. A life of leisure, however, is a state of autonomy that the diligent person obtains by building wealth.
Oh, I see.
He isn't saying you shouldn't enjoy your life. He's arguing that mindlessly spending capital you don't have to impress people you don't even care about, that is not leisure. It's a cage.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Shifting your mindset to value true autonomous freedom over lazy consumption is the absolute prerequisite for executing any of the 1,000 plans in Dunphy's book.
Okay, so let's assume you adopt that mindset. You put your head down, you cut out the vanity spending, and you finally manage to save a small pool of capital.
Right.
In Dunphy's world, the moment you have that money, you step onto a battlefield.
You really do.
You instantly become a target.
Which prompts the very next section of the book. Before letting the reader go on the offensive to make more money, Dunphy includes this intense, highly tactical chapter. It's called Self-Protection Against Fraudulent Schemes and Wildcat Investments.
The historical context provided here is just tragic.
It is.
The text details how widows and heirs frequently lost 90% of their inheritances within just 3 to 6 months.
It happens so fast.
Yeah. They were relentlessly targeted by flatterers, fake marriage proposals, and these incredibly predatory friendly brokers who were, promising to double their money overnight.
And the mechanics of these 1919 scams are just a fascinating study in behavioral economics, mostly because the underlying tactics haven't evolved at all, just the dressing has changed.
Right.
These brokers were selling mortgages tied to worthless swamps or land completely inaccessible on top of snow-capped mountains.
Just literally selling thin air.
Exactly. They peddled shares in fake mining operations that were, in reality, just 10-foot holes dug in the ground with a few location stakes hammered nearby.
My personal favorite was the industrial stock scam.
Oh, that one is classic.
They would sell shares in a manufacturing company that owned absolutely zero factories, no machinery, no patents. The entire company consisted of nothing but a beautifully engraved certificate of incorporation sitting on a desk. Just a fancy piece of paper.
Right. And to combat this whole epidemic of fraud, Dunphy introduces a defensive perimeter that is remarkably aggressive. He calls it the 44-question gauntlet.
The gauntlet.
Yeah. He provides the reader with a list of 44 hyper-specific financial and legal questions, and he instructs them to force any salesman to answer them in writing before a single dollar changes hands.
I was reading through this list, and I couldn't stop laughing at the sheer hostility of it.
It's intense.
It really is. Imagine you're sitting in your parlor in 1919. A guy comes to your door offering a can't-miss investment opportunity, and you subject him to a brutal interrogation.
Just lock the door.
Yeah. You demand, set forth the legal descriptions of all real estate, furnish a detailed statement of net profit to date, explain the exact capitalization and the split between preferred and common stock. I mean, wouldn't handing a casual salesman a 44-question written exam completely kill a legitimate business deal?
It seems counterintuitive, I know, but Dunphy is actually leveraging a really profound psychological tripwire here. The 44 questions serve as a behavioral filter.
Okay, how so?
If you hand that exhaustive list to a legitimate business owner or a seller who genuinely believes in the fundamentals of their product, they will cooperate because they have the data and they have nothing to hide.
They might be annoyed, but they'll do it.
Exactly. A scammer, conversely, relies entirely on false urgency, emotional manipulation, and social pressure.
They need you to act fast before you think too hard.
Precisely. The moment a scammer encounters the massive friction of 44 detailed, written questions, their entire methodology collapses.
Right, the illusion is broken.
Yeah. They'll act deeply offended that you would question their honor. They'll claim you are missing a fleeting opportunity, and they will just flee from the conversation. So the actual answers to the questions almost don't matter as much as their reaction to being asked.
That is so smart. The overarching slogan Dunphy pushes in this section is, investigate before investing. He advises the reader to happily spend $25 to $50 up front, which, was a significant amount of capital back then.
Very significant.
Yeah, spend it to hire an independent lawyer or check with a county assessor about land improvements.
It teaches the reader the value of paying a small premium for the truth. You spend a little friction and capital on defense to save yourself thousands on the back end.
Right.
And once your capital is guarded by that level of intense skepticism, the book finally allows you to go on the offensive.
Let's talk about that offense, because this is where we see the absolute pioneers of what we now call sweaty startups.
Yeah.
People who created significant wealth out of thin air using just sheer grit and incredible scale.
Well, let's look closely at the mechanics of Plan 5, the vacant lots strategy.
Okay.
The source describes a woman starting with just a few $100s. She observes her city environment and identifies a very specific micro-friction, which is vacant real estate lots covered in unsightly weeds.
So she essentially looks at an aesthetic nuisance and sees an arbitrage opportunity. How did she monetize someone else's weeds?
She approaches the property owners with a really simple value proposition. The owners want their lots to look presentable so they can eventually sell them.
Right.
But they absolutely do not want to perform manual labor, so she contracts with them to keep the lots clean for the entire season at a rate of $3 per 100 feet of frontage.
Smart.
Yeah, and with her initial capital, she purchases several mowing machines and hires an army of 30 men to execute the physical labor while she acts as the logistics manager. She clears $1,200 her first summer.
That is a very solid seasonal business. But she didn't just stay a landscaping manager, did she?
No, she scaled it to a level that is almost difficult to comprehend. The following season, she uses her profits and her reputation to secure contracts on 2,000 acres of vacant city lots. But instead of simply mowing the weeds, she actively plows the land. She plants wheat across these fragmented city properties, harvests it at the end of the season, and nets an astonishing $11,000.
Wow. She literally planted an agricultural empire right in the middle of a bustling city using land she didn't even own.
It's brilliant.
It really is. But what if you don't have the capital to hire 30 men, or you have, zero interest in farming? Because there were several plans in the text that required almost zero capital by leveraging existing community structures instead.
Yeah, Plan 20, the pencil sharpener scheme, is a perfect case study in leveraging community structure. The source details a man in Chicago who purchases modern pencil sharpeners wholesale for 90 cents each.
Okay.
Alongside them, he buys botanical novelties known as resurrection plants for 2 cents each.
I actually had to look up resurrection plants when I read this.
Oh, really? What are they?
They are these strange little dry balls of vegetation that look completely dead.
Yeah.
Right. But when you drop them in a bowl of water, they uncurl and turn vibrant green in just a few hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a highly visual novelty. So how does he turn novelties and sharpeners into a business?
Well, he bypasses traditional retail entirely. He goes straight to public school classrooms.
Okay.
He offers a consignment deal to the teacher, handing over one 90-cent sharpener and 32-cent plants. The proposition is simple. The teacher instructs each student to take a plant home, sell it to their parents for 10 cents, and bring the coin back to school.
Right.
Once the 30 dimes are collected, the classroom gets to keep the fancy new pencil sharpener permanently.
This is fascinating because it solves multiple pain points simultaneously.
Exactly.
The teacher desperately needs a mechanical sharpener because hand-whittling pencils for 30 kids all day is a massive microfriction.
Yeah, nobody wants to do that.
Right. And the kids love the gamified nature of selling a cool magic plant. And the parents are amused enough to part with a dime.
And the man from Chicago collects $3 from the teacher at the end of the week. His initial cost for the package was to $1.50, meaning he effortlessly doubles his money.
Without doing any of the selling.
Right. He didn't have to market the plants, he didn't knock on residential doors, and he didn't manage any employees. He just recognized that a school classroom is a pre-organized, highly motivated distribution network just waiting to be activated.
He essentially invented modern crowdfunding. He completely blurred the lines between a charitable school fundraiser and a highly profitable retail distribution model.
It's genius.
It makes you realize that identifying a bottleneck, whether it's weedy lots or dull classroom pencils, and organizing other people's labor or networks, is a timeless blueprint for wealth.
And that underlying blueprint transitions perfectly into the final category of plans we analyzed.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to operate at a massive municipal scale like the vacant lots, and you don't have to build complex distribution networks.
Right.
You can discover incredible hidden value simply by providing hyper-niche conveniences that save people time.
This is the section that completely rewired my understanding of modern convenience apps.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I genuinely believe that food delivery platforms were an invention born entirely from smartphones and GPS. But then you look at Plan 17, which Dunphy calls the Montclair Plan, or cooperative cooking.
Right.
In 1919, women established a central off-site kitchen, what we would undeniably call a ghost kitchen today, and they delivered custom hot meals directly to subscribers' dining room tables.
And they executed this by utilizing the absolute bleeding-edge technology available to them at the time. They used thermos bottles to keep soups and liquids piping hot, and insulated Swedish containers to maintain the temperature of the meats during transit.
But the logistics of this still just boggle my mind. I mean, without algorithmic routing, without turn-by-turn navigation, and without insulated synthetic delivery bags, how did they manage to deliver hot custom meals to dozens of different families without it turning into an absolute operational nightmare?
Well, the mechanism that made it functional was hyper-local routing and community trust. They were not attempting to service a sprawling, chaotic metropolis with randomized on-demand orders. They sold localized subscription blocks.
Oh, like a milk route.
Exactly. The delivery routes were fixed, much like a traditional milkman's route, allowing for highly efficient, predictable transit times. It proves that the human desire to outsource domestic drudgery, specifically the relentless nightmare of daily cooking, as the text describes it, is a powerful economic driver that transcends eras.
Yeah, people will always pay for convenience.
Always. The tools evolve from horse-drawn carts to GPS-guided vehicles, but the market for saving people time remains completely static.
That theme of monetizing save time is everywhere in Dunphy's book. Take Plan 109, the meat saw sharpener.
That's a great one.
A man invests $60 into a specialized sharpening machine and purchases 600 brand new saw blades. He then walks into local butcher shops and pitches a brilliant service.
Because he recognizes that a butcher's most valuable asset is the time spent actively cutting and selling meat. Stopping to manually sharpen dull tools is a massive loss of productivity.
Right, so he tells the butcher, don't ever stop to sharpen your blades again. I will simply drop off 12 razor-sharp blades at the beginning of the month and take your 12 dull ones back to my shop. I'll charge you $1.20 a month for the rotation.
He constructed a highly profitable recurring subscription business. It is the exact mechanical structure of modern software as a service, but implemented with literal physical hardware.
Hardware as a service.
Exactly. He locked in predictable monthly revenue by removing a friction point the butcher hated dealing with.
Or consider the ingenuity of Plan 192, the Exchange Mart. A man rents a small, cheap room. He buys 2 completely blank notebooks.
Just 2 notebooks.
Literally just 2 blank notebooks. He labels one book buyers and the other book sellers. He then acts as a localized analog marketplace. If you want to sell a specialized tool or a piece of furniture, you list your asking price in his book. If someone comes in looking for that item, he connects the 2 parties and pockets the spread between the lowest asking price and the highest bidding price.
He essentially recognized an information gap in his local community.
Right.
Because before he opened that room, there was no centralized hub for secondary market transactions. By simply providing the physical space and the ledgers, he created market liquidity where none existed before.
He monetized 2 blank notebooks by becoming the ultimate middleman.
He really did it. And, when you step back and synthesize all the diverse sources within Dunphy's manual, a remarkably clear picture of true wealth generation emerges.
It really does.
According to this 1919 masterclass, financial resilience isn't the result of getting lucky on a wildcat investment.
No, it requires the foundation of Father Abraham.
Yes. It demands rigorous industry, a brutal commitment to frugality, and the discipline to guard your accumulated capital with intense, almost aggressive skepticism against scammers.
You have to be willing to deploy the 44 questions.
Exactly. And once that secure foundation is laid, wealth is generated by cultivating the sheer ingenuity to look closely at your environment.
Right, observing what's broken.
Yeah, it's about finding hidden value in the everyday frictions that everyone else is ignoring. The weedy lots, the dull saw blades, the daily cooking. And having the audacity to ask, how can I organize a solution that saves these people time or effort?
Which leaves you, the listener, with a pretty exciting question to mull over long after this deep dive ends. We started by marveling at how our modern apps are just shinier interfaces for century-old business models.
Yep.
If that is true, and if someone were to write the next 1,000 ways to make a living today, what invisible everyday weeds are growing in our digital backyards?
That's the real question.
What modern dull saw blades or information gaps are sitting right in front of us, just waiting for someone curious enough to notice them, organize a clever solution, and monetize them?